There you go. We're live.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to another Thursday night of the Guitar Gear Locker podcast. And my name is Alex Books. This is my co-host, Roger Sutherland. And tonight we have our guest, Dylan Wyland of...
Blake Wyland.
I'm Blake Wyland. I'm sorry.
We were just talking about Dylan.
Of Stringjoy and the Tone Mob, and we're just waiting for Blake to join us. And I guess while we're waiting, let's talk
about next week.
Yeah, so next week we're going to have a special podcast on for any people familiar with any of my music or my past. My original band Goreaphobia, there's actually been a reissue of our first recording from 1990 came out on a picture disc. And so to celebrate 35 years of that release, we're going to kind of go back into the recording of that 7-inch, that came out. And myself and our drummer, Craig Smolowski, will be on discussing that. So, it should be a lot of fun to kind of go back down memory lane and talk about that release, that pretty much put us on the map back then for me. And so, should be really interesting.
All right. Blake is the one. I'm going to let him in now.
Hello,
Blake Wyland. How you doing?
Good. How you guys doing?
Good, man. Good.
Nice. Good. We just kind of got it kicked off. We're talking about next week's show. We're going to do something on Alex's first band, Goreaphobia, next week.
Cool. Nice.
So, we were just kind of talking about that. And I saw you pop up in the waiting room down there.
Yeah. I would have been in a little sooner. It was trying to grab the wrong mic and I had to restart some stuff, but I think we're in business.
We were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
we think we're having weather here. So not that we don't have weather every day, but we're having some storms come through and I think it's messing with our internet.
Oh, well, It sounds good and looks good right now. So we'll just
awesome.
Roll with it.
Well, let's roll with it. Cool. So we appreciate good meeting you. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me.
As you may gather from some of my emails and some of the correspondence, I've been a big fan of Stringjoy. I've been a dealer of Stringjoy. I guess I may be going on 5 years now, 4.5 years.
Wow, thank you very much. Thank you.
And you know what? I'll tell a little bit of my story with Stringjoy, and then we're going to flip it right to you because I have a lot of questions, and we talk about you guys a lot. I'm sure a lot of our viewers have the questions also. And selfishly, when people are asking me about Stringjoy when they come in here as customers, I can tell them just watch the podcast.
There you go. I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
Yeah, there you go. So so Stringjoy back in the day kept coming up in my feed right as I opened up my business, and I opened up part-time as a side gig at first, and I started looking at it. I was wondering about it. I tried a set. I liked them a lot and reached out to Chris Gilchrist and inquired about the great guy. And I'll talk more about him in a second because I want to give him and John Weiscarver a shout out. They've been great.
Yeah.
But, what stuck out, and we talk about this a lot, is dealing with companies and the product and the relationship aspect of it. And that really meant a lot. That especially Chris in the early days, he would call and check on me. We've had personal conversations about families and things like that. Just a great guy. And I think that's what really stuck out in my mind, other than the product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Chris was, he was our first real internal sales hire.
Right.
Before that, we had been working with an outside company that did great, but their expertise was in mostly in pedals at the time. They've expanded into some other things, and it's just they wanted to be in a pretty narrow band of dealers, which totally made sense for the type of products they sold.
Sure.
But for us, I always say we sell we sell the cigarettes of the guitar world, and if we're not there, much like cigarettes, if we're not at your store when you need it, it's It's like,
Right.
yeah, I'd rather have X brand, but Y brand's here and I need it
Right.
now. So
Right.
not
That is
the,
a great analogy.
yeah, not the healthiest comparison. Strings are a lot healthy, a lot better for you. But
I was wondering how you were going to tie the two in, but you did a great job.
yeah, we consider ourselves the American spirits, though. There's
Yeah, there you
a
go.
lot less smokers at the company than there used to be. A lot of
Right.
them have quit.
Right. That's right. That's right. So like I said, the company side of it, them checking in. I think there was one time we thought we had an issue with one set of strings one time, and I think Scott himself got involved in that. I think it turned out it was something I was putting on a fretboard. But that is very impressive. And even my customer said that, because I told him, I was talking with Chris and Scott at the time, and that really struck him that the owner of the company pretty much is worried about how his experience was going with Stringjoy.
It's I mean, we exist because we can provide a better experience. That's the
Right.
whole reason we even deserve to be around as a company, because
Right.
otherwise, if you want things to be fine, if you want things to be okay, there's plenty of options for you.
There's
But if
plenty
you
of okay out there.
yeah, but we will always strive to be the best that we can possibly be. And we actually had, I can never tell this story as fully as I'd like to, but we had a person who is a white label manufacturer, meaning they make for a handful of other brands, but
Sure.
they don't really do their own thing. Maybe they do these days. I'm not really 100% sure, but
Mhm.
they came through our factory and literally said, "You guys are crazy. The customers will not notice these things." And I'm like, yeah, they do though. They may
Yeah.
not know what they're experiencing because they're
Right.
not an expert at making the product,
Right.
but they know when something's off.
Right.
And
Right.
our job is to make it as close to perfect as possible.
Right. Right. They don't know guitar people very well, I think, if they said that.
I think they're just that far removed, right? They're
Yeah.
selling it to somebody who sells it to somebody. And
Right.
then that person sells it to somebody else. And
Right.
so I
Right.
just think they don't get the same feedback that we do with working one-on-one with these customers.
Right. Now, I know, and I may have jumped way ahead in this. I just wanted to kind of tell my experience, a three-alarm guitar with Stringjoy. But can we talk a little bit about how Stringjoy, of course, we all know the story, but the listeners don't, how, just very quickly, how Stringjoy got up and going?
Yeah, I'll do my best, because I am not the founder, but I am the second guy. My badge always says the other guy. So that's how people know me. But Scott and I actually met through my podcast. He had started Stringjoy as a
Right.
custom shop at first. His
Okay.
thing was he liked buying, even as a kid, like a young kid, like 16, buying random sets of, not random, but multiple sets of strings
Sure.
to put together the sets that he wanted. Like, oh, this person
Right.
makes a 48, this person, or I like the 46s from this company and not from
Right.
this company, or whatever. He
Right.
was already getting that nerdy about it. And
Right.
so he decided it would have been 2014, why is this still a thing? Why
Yeah.
can't you put together a custom set online in 2014? This should exist. I
Right.
guess I'm gonna do it. So
Right.
he started with $500 in an attic of the house
Right.
he lived in with a bunch of dudes, and
Uh-huh.
started sourcing things from different manufacturers, like the one we were just talking about,
Right.
and finding what he liked about different people's different methods. There's,
Right.
contrary to popular belief, some people will say there's only 3 manufacturers of guitar strings and everything else is a brand.
Yeah.
Now, there are a lot more brands than there are manufacturers. That
Yes.
is true. But
Right.
by my last count in the United States, there are about a dozen or so
Right.
companies actually manufacturing
Right.
in various capacities for different reasons for different brands.
Mm-hmm.
But he just was so particular about it. And then I got involved in about late 2015, early 2016, somewhere in that ballpark.
Right.
He came on my podcast, and I literally thought, we're going to talk about strings for an hour? This is going to be, this is going to be boring, right? Fast forward to now, I've still talked to him about strings almost every single day for just shy of a decade now of my involvement with it. So.
Right.
But the company evolved from there. So it was a custom shop first. That's what we did. And we did custom strings online, direct to consumer primarily.
Right.
The turning point was just a few years later when one of the providers we were using for strings, we use different people for different things, but for certain wound strings, we use this one guy. And we said, can we, modify the core wire? Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do? And he's like, no, I make them one way and that's how I do them. And we were just like, but I think it could be better if you change these different things. And he said, tell you what, I'm going to sell you 2 machines and I don't ever want to talk to you again.
One way of handling it.
So we went, okay. And so we bought those 2 machines and it's been off to the races. He was super cool. He came down and like showed us the ropes of how to run them and got some basics, but it wasn't 2 hours after he left that Scott started tweaking things.
Right. Now, and I know some of the answers of some of these, but those 2 machines, the original machines, they were kind of nostalgic. That's the way strings were done kind of back in the day, is the way I would say it, right?
Yeah, well, we learned a lot on those, and we still have them. We call them, it's Waylon and Willie. Those are our 2 originals. And they're great machines. They were made by Thomas Vinci, who was one of the OG. He's an Italian descent, but American string company guys. I mean, he made product for a ton of different companies. It's a story that Scott's more familiar with than me, but I can get you that far. Those are great machines still to this day, but they're very manual. But what's great about starting there is Scott and the team learned all these manual processes and how to like literally adjusting on the fly, guiding the carriage by hand and like watching what it was doing. To where when we got our newer machines that are genuinely quite a bit more advanced, we were able to program all that in to where it's exact. But we wouldn't have known that to program that in if it wasn't for learning on those manual machines. So they were still very important.
Well, and the reason why I kind of honed in on the older vintage machines, and then I knew that y'all had kind of worked with the newer machines and made those, made your windings and all that kind of stuff like the old machines, is because people really gravitate to that when I tell them that. When they ask me, so tell me about Stringjoy, and I've done enough research where I know that you all were doing them kind of the way that they were done back in the day, and you had your own kind of way of doing it that is better, and it was a selling point for a lot of guys. They like that. They like that in Nashville. They're made in USA, they're made in Nashville. But as soon as you mention, this is the way, they're making them on older machines and now the newer machines, like they did with the older machine. It's a selling point, I think.
The older machines enabled us to basically really refine our process and get down, like literally like, oh, how much compression are we putting in this? What angle are we approaching it with? What are we actually physically doing? So when we got these newer ones, we can take all the things we loved about the old machines and because if we had started with those realistically, it would have been flying blind. We wouldn't have really known all that. And so able to just dial it in exactly and actually see a readout of this is how much of the it gets really complicated, to be honest, but we can see it in real time and program it to do exactly what we want. And then the wire's slightly different, we can adjust for that, and we used to have to do that by feel, and now we can do it by a program that anybody can follow. Right.
Well, and that's it's funny because there's a couple of things that I'll say that it seems like some guys in particular will fixate on, and one is the way that you all are making the strings, and the other is I kind of refer to you all affectionately as string nerds, and they love it. They love it. You should get a shirt that says that. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's you don't know how it's going to hit, but the guys, when you tell them that, because I think like we say that every week, Alex, that we just get in here and nerd out about gear and stuff like that. But I think guitar guys know that means you're very passionate about what you do. I think that's the way that translates in their head.
Well, let me toot Scott horn a little bit here, because I'm probably going to do that a lot on this podcast, to be honest. But he is a really sharp dude. This guy, I remember what I told my family when he first asked me to be involved with the company. I said, if this guy was selling toilet paper,
Yeah.
I would want to be involved because it's going to be
Right.
the best toilet paper.
Right.
Right. It's
Right.
going to be really good. Whatever he's into, it's going to be really good. And he's
Right.
going to do a great job of getting it out there. And I'd
Right.
like to hitch myself to that wagon and help in whatever way I can. So
Absolutely.
to say that we are string nerds, yes, we all are, basically everybody at the company, but
Right.
it comes from the top. The
Right.
head string nerd for sure.
Right. Right. Well, and if you watch or listen to any interview he's ever done, that comes off in like the first 5 seconds. You
Yeah.
can tell he's very passionate about what he does, and he really knows what he knows about strings. And he's really, you know, and we'll talk more about the products here in a second, but you know, something like the 1048s, you know, a 46 rather than a 48 for string 6, you know, he goes into why that is. You know, he's playing a Telecaster and he kept dumping over the edge and found that the 48 gauge didn't as much. So, you know, little things like that. What is the other one? It's the I have to cheat, the 13.5.
Yep.
On string number 2, like things like that you could tell, like if you're going, I need, like my B string needs to be a 13.5. Yeah, you figured that one out.
Yeah,
You analyze that.
Yeah, well, it's coming to realize that a lot of stuff in the guitar industry, it's kind of funny, right? A lot of people are like, Leo Fender got it right the first time, you know, and it's like, in what other business was the Ford Model T the epitome of the automobile? It's cool,
Right.
it's important, but is it the best car that's ever been made? No, not even close, right? So, but yeah, in the guitar industry, it tends to be like the older stuff is better. And I love old guitars. I'm not bashing vintage instruments at all. I think they're super cool, but it doesn't mean that the way it was is the way that it should be. And that is the approach that we've taken to strings as well. There are some things that we've taken from the tradition and some things that we've thrown away.
Sure.
And if somebody really wants a 10 to 46 set, we offer that.
Sure.
Of course. But the 10 to 48 is our best seller for a reason, because it is different. And when you put it on, you're like, oh, I love 10 to 46. Oh, wait a minute. No, I don't. I just thought I did because that's all there was.
Right. Right. And you know what? We've talked about this on a couple shows. I've even had young guys coming in here playing some, you know, super heavy music that go directly to you guys and get like the craziest strings and the craziest combinations, you know, and they know exactly what they want, and you all do it every time. And it's kind of cool to see that happen with the younger guys, because my age group, we're kind of set in our ways. When I say 10 to 48, I usually get a funny look.
Yep. I know the look. Yep.
Then I explain it, and then I throw in a little side order of string nerd. And then when they test it out, they're like, oh yeah, I like these a lot. Not for everybody, but I would say 80% of what I have that comes through my shop is Stringjoy.
The 10 to 48 switch, I think that'd be about what I'd say too. 80-85%. Everyone's skeptical. And then they try it and they're like, oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah. You could see that look. I'm gonna throw a couple comments up.
Sure.
Oh, Alex, that was from earlier. He ordered that picture. And then Necrochin is with us every week. He wasn't early this week. You have to beat me in here next week. He usually beats me to the podcast. Here he is again. All right. So what, and we talked a little bit about this. So what makes Stringjoy different from other strings?
Yeah, this one's always the toughest one. This is the number one question at NAMM or any other trade show. And I think people are used to an answer that's like, well, we coat them, or well, we use this special metal, or we do this thing that you've never heard of. And that's not it. For us, it's not one thing we can point at. It's a billion. I don't know what the number is. It's a lot of little things.
Sure.
You know, if you do a ton of stuff 1% better, it adds up in the end. And so the main thing that we do, like that's kind of across the board, is we wind our strings at tension. Now that seems like a no-brainer. You would think that would be how it's done. It's not how it's done everywhere. Some places do it, some places don't. We also, especially in the case of our Broadways, we wind with more compression on the core wire. So there's actually almost double the amount of pure nickel mass on our Broadways that there would be on a competitor string. And we also make sure the winds are closer together. By winding at tension, and making sure the winds are, and that has a lot to do with the wrap angle when you're starting.
Right.
What that does is it doesn't let stuff get down to the core as easily.
Sure.
So when you take a string that's not wound at tension and it's not wound with a very close eye on the angle, what you get is you tune it up to pitch, and it all of those wraps come apart. And there's little gaps that you can't really see with the naked eye, but you super can under magnification. And you're not going to get that with the way we do it.
Right.
And it makes a huge difference in how it feels, how it intonates, how it performs. It's just that's a big consideration. And that's one of the things, like, you guys are crazy. That doesn't matter. Like, it does though.
Right. It does. And so that's interesting you said that. And I know this is super nerdy stuff, and people are either going to like this or they're not. I think it's super interesting. So here's what I notice. I mean, we could say a lot of things about guitars and, where's the tone at? What's this? What's that? But I try to think like, how can you prove something? We can always say something is better or something is whatever. But so I try to, like, as I'm putting strings on or I'm doing things, I try to think of, like, what is it doing? How can I explain this to somebody? How can I articulate it? And some of that may come from my background as a fire investigator. We just couldn't go in and say, hey, something caught on fire because somebody dropped a candle.
Right.
Electrical is kind of our joke. If somebody didn't know what they were doing, they would say it started by electrical or cigarettes or whatever. But anybody could go in and say that, but how do you prove it? So I can say the strings are better, but here's what I've noticed, and you just explained it. This is what I always try to do so I can articulate it other than just saying something. So when I put Stringjoy strings on, when restringing after a setup, I can stretch them in once, maybe twice, play it a little bit. I usually let it set for a little while and let things kind of settle in, come back in, tune it back, and it's good. Other strings, 3, 4, 5. And I think what you just explained told me why that is. So the way that you're winding it. So what I noticed wasn't just a weird guitar voodoo observation. It's probably true.
Well, when you don't wind, especially, that's like where that core tension comes in really key. If you're not winding that at tension, the string kind of gets used to being at that looser tension, right? But that's not how you play it.
Right.
It may make some process of the wind easier in certain applications. Right. And it also results in something that you put on, you got to stretch it out a lot. The other thing it does is it'll sound great for a couple days. Right. And then it just dies.
Right.
That is also a result of not winding at tension.
Right.
So, and to me, I come from a mechanical background. So the first time I started looking at this, I was like, some people wind them loose. What? Like, why would you do that? And then I learned, it makes certain things easier and faster. But it results in, and not everybody does this. I don't mean to be like, we're the only ones that have ever done this.
Sure.
But some major players do, because it increases their output capacity.
Right.
And it's just, it results in exactly what you talked about. And then, less life. And it's just weird. You wouldn't think that the method of wind would matter. Some people think strings are strings, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah. And other people could say, well, I mean, who cares how many times Roger has to stretch a string out when he does a setup? But, you're talking about tuning stability. You're talking about, I see guys that are always tuning on stage, stretching their strings out and all that. If something kind of settles in and stays there, I'm all about that, So, and so I guess that isn't something that I just kind of pull it out of thin air. Like, so it really may be a thing that I'm noticing.
That's one of the major compliments we get is similar to what you're saying. Like, I don't have to just keep messing with it and keep stretching it and keep tuning it.
Right.
Once I get it there, it's pretty much there.
Yeah. That's good. So, the other thing is, you mentioned it earlier. I was hoping we were going to hit it earlier. I like to go by my list. I'm kind of OCD.
Hey, that's good. I'm good with whatever.
Right. So, coated versus uncoated. So you all do your coated strings a little differently. And so the major complaint I get from customers on strings in general, especially coated, is sometimes they say coated strings feel slimy, is what they say. That description they give, they feel slimy. So you all do yours differently.
Yeah. So both Scott and I don't really like the traditional coated string as players. Just
Right.
I get that they have their place, and for those that really like them, totally understand.
Right.
It's not something we're ever gonna do because we don't really like it.
Yeah.
I always describe it I don't say slimy. I usually say, hey, if you really like playing hot dogs, that's fine. Go for it, you know?
Right.
But in all joking aside, for some people, the finger noise is really important to them, and that's going to reduce it for sure. And there are benefits to that. And if you live in a really gnarly environment, you may want to consider something like a traditional coated string.
Right.
But for us, we don't like them. It's just not how I didn't grow up playing those. When I first time I tried to switch into them, they flaked and got weird, and it was just like, we don't want to make coated strings. That's lame. So our approach from day one was, okay, everyone's begging for us to make a coated string. We have to make a coated string for people who hate coated strings, which is Scott and myself.
Right.
So we played with a lot of different things, and the thing we landed on was coating the wrap wire itself in a hard enamel. It's actually it's not exactly the same, but it's similar to what you see on pickup wire, which is kind of where the idea came from. And so we're like, okay, let's try that. Pickup wire is completely different than anything we use, but it seems flexible enough to like do what it needs to do, but stiff. It just made sense to us why this might work.
Right.
So we tried it, and we made it the exact same way that we normally do, but with the coated wire.
Right.
And what we found was, I mean, I sent strings to Singapore to go live in the jungle, and obviously Tennessee isn't exactly super friendly weather-wise either. And up here in the Pacific Northwest, it rains constantly. So we had a few different gnarly climates to test things in. The first prototype set over the Foxwoods. We did the acoustics first. I put a set on my dad's SJ200. There you go. Yep, that's right there. And,
I'll be your Vanna White.
Named after a neighborhood in Nashville. That's where that.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
A lot of people are like, "What's that even mean?" I'm like, "Well, it's a neighborhood in Nashville, and it sounded cool, so we went."
Right.
But I put a set of the prototypes on my dad's SJ200, and my mom doesn't care that much about this stuff. But I put the set on. I'm over at her house, and I'm playing, and she just leans around. It's like, "Did you just change the strings on your dad's guitar?" It's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Those sound great." I was like, "Yeah, they do." And still, Foxwoods on an SJ200 is my favorite like acoustic sound ever. But we left those on for 9 months, and all the other testing had come back good. And I said, "Okay, Scott, let me do one more thing. I'm going to shoot a video with my terrible guitar playing, because I normally play with lots of gain and electric, and I'm going to play acoustic guitar, strumming some cowboy chords." But I did a swap. I played those 9-month-old strings and put on the brand new ones, and you can tell a difference, but it's so small. And that video is like embedded on the website. It's not a great, aesthetically pleasing video, but I had a decent mic and everything, so it sounds okay.
Sure.
But the difference, it was shocking. Like, so we knew we were onto something after I was able to kind of send him those test clips and all the other tests we got back. The lady in Singapore who tested it said she got a full month, and this is like I said, very humid, very gnarly weather. And so we were really happy with the results, and we put them out there. The other side benefit that we weren't really expecting was coated strings often sound kind of dull compared to an uncoated, counterpart.
Right.
And what we found with these is they actually, both on the electric and the acoustic, they're actually brighter and have more output, which was totally counterintuitive to what we were expecting.
Right.
So we put those out. We only coat the wrap wire, apply it, and if you didn't know they were coated, I don't think you would ever suspect it. Well,
and so most strings that are coating with a Gore-Tex type of material, correct? And they coat, so they're basically, I always say, like, they dunk the entire string after it's wound through a Gore-Tex like chemical.
That's my understanding. I'm not like intimately familiar with their process, but that's like that. That's the gist of it. Yeah.
So, and I think that's like when you're you all do the coating before it's wrapped. So that's why you don't have that they say slimy is what I hear the most. So you can feel the individual, the wrappings in it or the windings in it, however you want to say it.
Right. Yeah. You can feel it feels like a normal string. They're a little bit slicker than a normal string, but like I said, I don't think you would know that they were coated unless you knew.
I personally like them. I do have quite a few people that don't like any kind of coated strings.
Sure.
The guitar on the bench behind me is an older guitar, and he does not want coated strings. And some people like them, some people don't. I was one of the people that was begging Chris to have coated. Every time I talk to him, you have coated strings yet? No, but they're thinking about it. I was one of those guys. Yep. I'm going to throw a couple comments up here. I'd rather have one good set of strings to stay in tune for sure.
Sure.
And Cheech is with us again this week. Durability, they do last. And I was going to get to that after the comments. So they don't rust. Let me hit the last comment and then we'll talk about that. And I won't give the company. I'm curious to try Stringjoy. You should. And I'm a dealer for both of those. But I like. So everybody asked me on my personal guitars. I have two that are kind of like my demos for Stringjoys. But I move so many Stringjoys. I call those the good strings. I keep those go to the customers. I have everything else on my guitars except for like two. So that tells you how I feel about them. So rusting is a thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And some people know that.
Some people have acid sweat, and there's not anything that any manufacturer can do about that either.
Well, no, but okay, so true. But I'm talking about out of the package.
Oh, right. Well, there's things that manufacturers can do about that. Yes.
So both, both do happen. But I've never had anybody tell me that their strings have rusted on their guitar. Stringjoys.
Yeah. So we're pretty particular about that. Now, it's not complete. I don't want to sit here and be like, that's completely impossible. It'll never ever happen ever.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
That's not a thing I can say. I can say that we guarantee everything we sell 100%. So if you ever run into anything yourself or anybody that gives them a try from watching this, hit us up at support and we will make sure you're taken care of 100%.
I can say you all are very responsive. Whenever I notice anything as an observation, I relay it it was Chris, but now John. And every time he comes, he's so he'll ask more questions, more probing questions. All right. So when did it happen? What did it happen? Where did it happen? All that kind of stuff. So the quality control there is, superb. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, so I tried when I first became a Stringjoy dealer. This was before coated strings. I tried it with somebody who gigs heavily here in our area. We're in between Richmond and DC.
Okay.
Gigs heavily, teaches every single day, full load every day. And I gave him a set and I said, tell me how long they last. I just comped them and just wanted to see. And I think he got about 2.5 months out of it. And he plays all the time. So the coated strings, I personally found on my, I had them on my acoustic for a long time. And I had one set last me 6 months. And that's my armchair grabber. I grab that all day long and I'm playing it. Those were the coated strings. So I guess the question is, if you're a string company that sells strings, how long do you want your strings to last?
We want them to last as long.
There's a tipping point.
Yeah. Well, we want them to last as long as possible, realistically speaking, because nothing lasts forever, right? They're at some point they're going to break, or they do eventually. There's some mechanical failures that could happen, especially if you're like an aggressive player. I play pretty aggressively. I've had this happen where it's like it's kind of come loose. It is not probably the best way to describe it, but it's kind of come loose from the core and it's not resonating right anymore.
Right.
And you can totally hear it. And it's just, it's done. It might look fine. It might feel fine, but it's not fine. There are things that can happen internally that are almost impossible to see that you'll just know well, that string didn't sound like that yesterday.
Right.
You
Right.
know? So we want them to last as long as we possibly can, because it just doesn't really, people are going to change them at some point,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
and we just want to put the best product out that they can. I don't think, really, truly, I don't think that anybody's making stuff here in the States right now with I would be surprised to learn that they're like, these have an estimated lifespan of 3 weeks, and we do that on purpose because we've engineered it so.
Yeah, you wouldn't think. You would hope they aren't doing that.
It would be tough to do.
Right.
Like, really, realistically speaking, it'd be easier just to make a better string.
So, and I have to put a disclaimer. So I said I got 6 months out of it, and they were fine for 6 months, but I'm like the mechanic, man. I'm wrenching on guitars all day long. So my guitars get serviced last. So 6 months may have been a little on the long side, but it was 6 months I had them on there.
Yeah.
So sorry, Alex, I have commandeered this whole conversation, and we only have you for an hour. And so we're going to knock the business out up front, and then we're going to talk more about what you listen to and a little bit of gear. I know you don't want to talk about strings all night.
Hey, I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. I talk for a living, so this is great for me.
Right. Go ahead.
To shift gears a little bit, Blake. I'm a touring musician, and me and Roger have been doing this podcast for about a year now. And the idea that I came up with, and I discussed it with Roger, it's like, hey, how about doing a podcast? Because I'm the nerd on tour that meets, whatever band I'm out on tour with, or whether it's the one of the guitar techs that we just kind of nerd out, and the rest of my band members' heads are blowing up. They're like, oh boy, he found another friend. They're nerding out about something for hours, about pickups and tone woods and stuff. But so basically, I like to ask you, where you came up with the idea to start the Tone Mob. I mean, was this something just out of your passion of just discussing these subjects? Where you were just like, you know what, I want to talk with other people that are like-minded like myself, and just kind of nerd out and just pick people's brains on their stories. So was this something that you were passionate about in the beginning with the Tone Mob?
Very, very much so. It was really, a lot of it stemmed out of the lack of passion I had for what I was doing for a living at the time. I was like, this is a good job. I'm glad I have it, but also I don't like it. Then it led me down like, okay, what do you like? Like, I like guitar stuff. I like music. What are the things that you're thinking about all the time when you have free time and you can think about whatever you want to think about or study whatever you want to study? Right. Guitars and music, and specifically gear. Like, I was just obsessed with that stuff. And then I thought, okay, well, what can you do with that? And you go through the list, start a guitar store, I don't know, like maybe I can make a pedal company. I don't know anything about making pedals. I love pedals, but I don't know anything about it. You go through all these things, and I'm like, well, what are you like already good at? Like, just jabbering. I'm pretty good at talking. And at the time, there were no other podcasts, which is weird to believe, but in 2015, there were no other podcasts that were like interviewing people from the guitar gear world. There had been some that had kind of started up and then fizzled out, but there were no active ones at the time. There were other podcasts that had started, but they weren't doing interviews. Right. And so I thought, maybe I can figure this out. But the first thing I did is I posted I have a 1965 Ampeg J12, and I posted that on Instagram. And I was like, oh my goodness, strangers are liking it. I don't know who these people are. Oh, somebody followed me. What? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I can generate some buzz here, and then, I can get the podcast going. And that's exactly what I did. I kept posting different gear posts. Some of it was mine. Some of it was reshares. I didn't even share my face on there for like a couple of years. It feels like maybe a year and a half. Right. But I did start the podcast fairly early. I think it was, again, right around the same time, late 2015, early 2016, somewhere in that ballpark. Right. And I was just, by the nature of not having any competition, not competition is the wrong way to put it, but like there were no other options. There was nobody else doing it. So early on, I got Brian Wampler, Robert Keeley, Josh Scott, because they'd never been asked to do a podcast before, as far as I know. So it was kind of it wasn't a new thing. It'd been around for a long time, but just was new to our world.
Right.
And I started realizing, I think I can turn this into something I could maybe pay my bills with.
Right.
And I doubled and tripled down. I was like, what I tell everybody on the podcast, I basically worked 3.5 full-time jobs for about 3.5 years. I did my day job. I did the podcast. Through the podcast, I got involved in Stringjoy. And then Scott and I were also doing some like marketing consulting on the side, because we both accidentally found out we had a brain for that stuff, even though neither of us are formally trained in that particular online marketing space. Right. So we did all that for several years. And in 2018, I was finally able to quit my job and go at it full time. And it's been full steam ahead ever since. So now I only have 2.5 full-time jobs, which is
right. Well, I can tell you, and you when I had texted you or when I had emailed you, I told you, man, this podcasting is a grind. Like, people think it was just some guys BSing it, but but there's a lot behind the scenes. There's setting it up. There's I always joke about watching it back the next day and doing the chapters. That's a lot of work. They don't realize that my hat's off to you, because doing it full time, I couldn't imagine. It's work.
It's I don't like doing some of that stuff you're describing, but like any job's gonna have that, right? You always gotta pay your taxes and stuff. Like, there's always things you're not gonna like. You're not gonna love every second of every day for everything. But when I get to do things like this is what I love to do. I get to meet like-minded people. I get to hang out with like-minded people. And then I've gotten to meet some of my musical heroes have become friends purely through the podcast. So it's, I mean, I wouldn't trade it, but it is a lot more than meets the eye.
Right. And I heard you say that on some of your other shows. Like, I don't, and I know people didn't tune in to see about podcasts, but I find this interesting. It is I didn't, when Alex and I went into it, we were like, well, sure, we're just going to go on here. And then it's like, well, how do you even do it? So then you start buying the equipment. And it's like, well, how does this stuff even work? And then you feel old. Well, because I am old, or getting old. But yeah, there's a large learning curve, and there's really no how-to books out there. There's a lot of people that tell you how to get clicks, but that's just so they can get clicks, I think.
Right. Yeah, I'm actually thinking about trying to fix that a little bit, and maybe make some sort of educational material about podcasting specifically, and just show people, like, you don't have to be Joe Rogan to make this work. You can go into niches, you can do things, and it doesn't have to be your only thing, but it can feed your other stuff. It can all work together and kind of hub together. And I've really thought about trying to put some content together around that at some point, when I have some time. We'll see how that works out.
And I think I guess no matter what your niche is, that there's an audience for it. But I think I watch a lot of content. I saw you had an interview with Phil McKnight, and I got to tell you, I was watching Phil McKnight when he still owned the store. I like stumbled on him on a Saturday with Ralph in his bedroom. That's how long I've been watching that guy. And it just kind of turned into, that's what I do on Friday nights. And I that's what Alex and I are trying to do, is like, hey, this is what you do on Thursday nights. Just come hang out with us and BS about cool stuff and gear with like-minded people. But that's kind of my thing on Friday nights, every Friday night. And I probably miss maybe 2 a year.
Nice. Phil's awesome. I'd like to get him back on. He's a guy that I met at GearFest, and we'd kind of crossed paths on the internet a few times, but we really met at GearFest. And he's such a good dude. I really like him, and
he is.
He really paved the way for a lot of us.
He did. He's been doing it a long time. I remember watching it when not to make this about Phil McKnight, but it was interesting to see when he said he was going to get rid of his store and go into podcasting. And I'm sure all of us watching in those early days, the guitar guys were going like, wow, what does that even mean? But everybody says how good of a guy he is. I met him at PRS Experience, the last one they had. Just a great, genuine guy. Just a really good guy. And I
100%.
met Tim Peirce there too. He was a great guy.
Also, yep.
So, yeah. So what's your favorite piece of gear right now?
Oh,
everybody likes getting a business. Even Adam said it was fun getting the business part out of the way. Now let's talk about gear.
So, my official answer to that is always the shred shed itself.
Yeah.
I built this before I thought I was actually going to be using it the way I am. I knew I was going to play music out here.
Yeah.
But I was literally like, oh, it'll be a recording studio for me.
Right.
And it is a recording studio for me, but I didn't know it was going to be like a content creation place. I thought it was just going to be straight music. So
right.
If I hadn't built this, my life would be substantially more difficult. I just kind of did it at the same time by accident. I started this before the podcast. Just because I'm such a nerd, I needed to build my own shed in my backyard to hold all my stuff, which is terrible. But then it turned into, oh, wow, this is going to be great for that. Oh, I didn't even know. And so the shred shed is my official answer to my favorite.
I love that. The shred shed.
Yeah. But when you say that, I know that's not what what people are looking for. Probably one of the coolest pieces of gear that I've got in the last couple of years, and I use it almost every day, is the Boss tube amp expander.
Okay.
I love the Boss tube amp expander, and I got the core now too. So I've got the Big Daddy and the core.
Yeah.
What a great piece of kit. Man, that makes my life easy. I get to have my cake and eat it too. People are going, analog, digital, what do you got? I'm like, I do both. It's great. Because I can run my tube amp direct into my interface through my monitors if I want, which is how I do it a lot. I can run it into a big amp, mic it up, and adjust the level to where it's perfect, yet I can saturate the tubes as much as I want and get the levels perfect, and run it direct out if I want to.
Yeah.
And then I can run an even more hybrid setup where I do that with the tube amp expander, mic'd up, direct in, and maybe run, say, I really like the Mr. Black double tracker for this. Another signal out direct to my interface into an amp sim, kind of like you would a DI. And I've got I can do 1, 2, 3, 4. I can do simultaneously. I can do like 6 cabs off of one setup in my inside. So wow, it's I think I got that number right. Don't quote me on that. I'm doing mental math here. But and then I can swap the IRs out inside the DAW if I want to and see what's working best. I can use the internal ones. I can load in my own into that thing. It's brilliant. And now that I started using a compressor in the effects loop, I love the tube amp expander so much. I really do love that thing.
Alex, you thought you were a gear nerd. He just blew by you.
You don't leave the shred shed then. You're there 24/7. Right?
It's great because I can go out and be out of work mode and then come back in, and I'm in work creative mode, and it's separate from my house. It's close. It's only 10 feet away, but it's separate. And I got my own spot here.
And that's kind of important too when you pretty much work at home, because I'm there now. I retired from the fire department. This is my job. I had the guitar business during the day, and I try to have. I don't have a shred shed. I probably need one though. That's what I need in my life.
Yes,
but I have an area of my house, and this is where I come to work, and I try to keep it separate from the living area, so you don't mix it. So you're not living at work.
It is good mentally, I think. Even if I had we have an office that's kind of just an office / collect bunch of crap room. And if I had to work in there, life would be a lot harder for me. But I also like to turn up loud amplifiers. So this thing is double walled. It's got 2 layers of 5/8 drywall. It's it's really overbuilt. It's a shed, but it's also where I will take the family in the event of a hurricane.
There you go. And if anybody has any questions, you can get. I'm looking down in the comments. Kick any questions that you have while we're gear geeking now. So, favorite guitar?
Yeah.
So I had to answer the if your house was on fire question here back in 2020. My house was not on fire, but we were on an evac notice.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I grabbed. You can kind of see it over my shoulder there. Oh no, that way. It's a 1955 Les Paul Jr. that belonged to my grandpa.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
And so he gave that to me when I was 20, maybe.
Okay.
It had some problems, and he played guitar, but his main thing was piano.
Sure.
And I didn't know he had it.
Mhm.
So it was just in his closet, and he was watching Antiques Roadshow with my grandma, and they brought one out, and they gave the price on it. And he was like, "Hold on, I have one of those." And she's like, "You do?" And not only that, he also had a 56 and a 61 champ. So he had two Tweed champs and the junior. My dad ended up with the 56, and I got the 61 here.
And grandma was saying, "Sell it."
No. I was grandma's baby, so she was all about it. But I got it. I didn't expect to get it. He was asking me questions, had like crumbly tuners, and like it did the classic early 50s junior thing where it pulled the bridge forward and all that.
Right.
I was like, well, let me take this up to my guy in Portland, and I'll get it fixed up for you, and you can get playing again. Right. So I did that, and I brought it back to him. I was like, cool, it's playing now, it's great. And he's like, yeah, cool. He played it, and he's like, how about you just keep it though? So then I about fell over.
Wow.
And that's my number one.
Do you have the original P90s in there as well?
Yep.
P90 in there.
I can grab it if you guys want to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, you're the one that said an hour, so whenever you say you have to leave, just let us know. Oh, look at that.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
There we go. Got to get a little creative here. So yeah, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is nice.
That's the baby. Yeah, pretty much all original. And got new tuners on it, but everything else is original. Actually, I take it back. I got a Mojo Axe bridge on it, which is it's got the adjusted intonation where the other ones were just straight. I still have the original, but I popped that on at the suggestion of Dave Haas, who played in a band called the Loved Ones, but he got that information from Brian Baker's from Bad Religion. So,
gotcha.
But yeah,
that is a nice guitar.
That's my baby. And then this is kind of cool too. My other grandpa is still with us, and he's really into woodworking.
Right.
But this was my grandpa Carl, who I think there it is. Might be able to see his name there.
Yeah.
This was his guitar. This was his belt.
Oh.
And I wore it for years until it kind of failed as a belt, and I gave it to my other grandpa, and he turned it into a strap for me.
So, man, there's only one thing better than a cool guitar. That's a cool guitar with a cool story.
Yeah. And I'm fortunate I got a few cool stories, and I got a lot of straps. You can kind of see them here from my other grandpa. He's made me a lot of straps over the years. So
nice.
I got a lot of family connections out in the music gear out here too.
Yeah, that's cool. Man, that is nice. So
long answer to what's your number one guitar, but there you go.
Yeah. All right, so what's your number one? Yeah, that you can't beat that one. What's your number one player?
Ooh, that's really tough.
Grabber.
Yeah. It's weird to say. I play all of these genuinely a lot, and there's some that you can't see, and there's some over here. But my first electric guitar is over here. It's a 2003 Les Paul Special Faded, one of those Guitar Center specials.
Yeah.
It's had a little bit of mods over the years. It's got the Billy Gibbons whisker buckers in it and a Gun Street solderless harness. And that guitar, just every time I pick it up, I'm right back in the garage. You know, I'm right back to like playing punk rock with my friends. And it's honestly probably my best sounding guitar.
Really?
Yeah, still.
Wow.
Yeah, my dad picked it up. My mom and dad, for my graduation, I was 16 when I graduated, which isn't actually that impressive. It's just how the dates fell, and then I took a bunch of extra classes to get out early. But it was only a year early. It's not like I was Dougie Hauser or something. But I didn't have an electric guitar, but all I wanted to do was play punk rock and metal. Right. And so I asked for an electric guitar for graduation, thinking I'd get like a lower end Ibanez or a Schecter or something more in that ballpark.
Right.
So I opened the case and saw this Les Paul and the word Gibson on the headstock. I again about had a heart attack. I posted on Instagram a few times the photo of the photo, and it's like my face is just like pure joy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at that. But the reason that my dad picked that one, he's an acoustic player primarily. He doesn't know that much about electric guitars,
Right.
but he had played everything in the local guitar center, and they had that event called The List. Do you remember The List? So yeah, they'd post that at the door, and this was all the deals they had. And they were like, what's this Gibson Les Paul? Where's that? Oh, it's sold. Like, oh, okay. All right. Well, that's fine. So mom's just looking around the store. She doesn't know that much about guitars either, but she's looking. She knows what a Gibson Les Paul is. And she sees this one in the corner. She's like, hey, is that the one that was on the list? And goes and gets the sales guy. He's like, oh, sure enough. I thought that was sold. Dad picks it up. He like strums it for like 2 seconds. He's like, this is a great guitar. This is the one we're getting. And so the rest is history. That thing started my Les Paul addiction and obsession. So I try to keep like, I'm not a collector of the same guitars. A lot of people are like, I've got 37 blonde tellies. That's not really my thing. I like to keep a variety. But I do have 1, 2, 3, 4 Les Pauls. So I have a little bit of that tendency, but they're all pretty different.
Correct. That's a good number of Les Pauls there.
They're all different though. So I got the Junior with the single P90. Yeah. I've got the recording here.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah. Oh, look at that.
So it's like a 72 recording.
Yeah.
And then I've got my white 81 custom that was a dream guitar for me that I was able to get before the prices exploded on those. Thankfully. Thanks, Adam Jones. And then the original 2003 that kind of started it all.
That is not too many. And sometimes, so we can be known for bagging on Gibson a little bit, but we both like Les Pauls. And that is, I think, maybe even 5. Maybe you should get one more.
I don't have an SG. I don't have an SG. Maybe I need an SG, like a Sister Rosetta Tharpe white, 3 pickup SG.
You're speaking Alex. I don't know where Alex is on your screen, but you're speaking Alex's language now. He's an SG guy. Well, he's a B guy, but he likes SGs.
The SG, what's it? The 3 humbucker, like the Jimi Hendrix colored one. Oh wow! So that 2003, what's the weight like on that? Because weren't they more weight relief?
It's not weight relief, but it's not heavy. I don't weigh my guitars very often until somebody asks me. So I'll have a scale. I'll have to weigh it later. And
that one probably isn't too bad, but your white one is probably pretty heavy, right?
I know that one because everyone asks, so it's not bad. It's 9.8.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah,
that's surprising.
Well, everyone's like, those are so heavy. I'm like, it is. That seems fine.
I was waiting for you to say like 11 or 12.
Yeah, it's 9.8, and it's funny because I got a Dan Armstrong, the Made in Japan reproduction, and the same thing. People on the internet are like, that thing's got to be a boat anchor. It's got to be so heavy. And I was holding it. I'm like, it feels the same as my custom, and I weighed it. Yep, 9.8. So I've gotten lucky with the heavier eras of guitars not being so heavy.
I like it. Hey guys, long time listener, first time call. That's pretty funny. Blake, are you a collector or does every guitar have a purpose?
Oh yeah, it's all got a purpose, baby, for sure. But I am also a collector. So can both of those things be true?
Absolutely.
Mean, I've got more pedals than any human should ever have. But I use them in my music. I do try to get, I guess, outside of the Les Paul addiction, I do try to get different guitars. So like I've got a standard telly, I've got a telly custom, different loadout. I've got a double pickup melody maker. Nothing else really does that either. And you can see kind of behind me, they're all just a little different. They all have different things. That blue guitar over my shoulder there is a Roni Oceana. Paul used to make some incredible instruments. It looks like it's got humbuckers in it. Those are actually 2 single coils.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so everything has a purpose. But I also, I just sometimes see something I like, and if I can afford it, it comes home.
There you go.
And I don't always have a rhyme or reason for it. But most of the time, I like something because I don't have anything that really does that.
Yeah. Does that sound like a reverend that I just bought that maybe I shouldn't have? For some reason it just spoke to me, and now it's just calling me dirty names.
Which one is that?
The King Bolts.
Oh, nice. Those are cool.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's okay. It's just it's not as much as they hyped it to be, but I like it. I play it a lot.
Mhm.
Probably not my favorite, but maybe a little overpriced, but things tend to be on the new market nowadays. So one thing that I notice is you all are well. Wait a minute. I know before I forget to ask you this, but I want to work to this other. So you're friends with Brian Wampler, and you mentioned you have a lot of pedals.
Yes.
In my feed, 500 times a day, I see this build a pedal class with him.
Uh-huh.
And before I die, I want to do everything at least one time.
Sure.
Even if I suck at it, I want to do it one time.
Mhm.
So good class, good thing to
I
do.
I
Good
haven't taken
experience.
it, but knowing Brian, see, this is the thing about Brian. I've gotten to know him so well over the years because we do the Chasing Tone podcast together as
Yeah.
well. We're on like I started with doing that around episode 100. We're
Okay.
on like episode 560 or
Oh,
something
wow.
now.
Yeah.
So I know him really well at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I met him, I was like, or digitally met him, I was like, I
Right.
can't believe Brian Wampler wants to talk to me. This is
Yeah.
crazy. And now
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But the thing is he's so smart.
Yeah.
His design chops are legit. Every time he comes out with something, you know, I'm just like, I don't always get to be one of the first to try it. So I might try it a few months down the line or whatever. And I'm like, Brian, you did it again, didn't you?
Yeah.
You did it
Yeah.
again. He is a very smart dude, and he is very, very particular. I
Uh-huh.
know that about him.
Uh-huh.
So if he is putting a course out and putting his name on it, I have not
Yeah.
taken this course,
Yeah.
but I would hazard a guess that it is probably the best course for its category that it could possibly be.
I mentioned it. It's been popping in my feed enough that it's subliminally getting in there that I need to do this. And I mentioned it to my wife. I said, I think I'm going to take this class by Brian Wampler. She goes, who is he and why do you need it? I said,
Right?
we don't need anything. You don't need anything.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it would be a cool experience, though. The other thing is, and Alex and I were talking about this, we noticed with some of the branding and even some of the darker side of Stringjoy.
Mm-hmm.
We noticed the branding is going more. We have a huge death metal presence here because of Alex and his background and his band.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the story about? I'm thinking Nashville country, but it seems like y'all are going after the metal guys too.
Well, metal guys are actually, weirdly enough, Scott noticed this at this last NAMM. I've known this for years because I am a metal guy. He is not as much. But he's like, man, I went over to the Strandberg booth and I was like a celebrity. I'm like, yeah, dude, a lot of metal players play our stuff.
Yeah.
And I think some of that like dark side, like things, it's grabbing people's attention, right?
Yeah.
You got to stop people from scrolling somehow. And
Right.
that is something that's confusing. Why would you say there's dark side? And immediately your brain wants to like stop and look at it. So that's a lot of it. But I mean, I got us to do the metal logo hats. I got us to do the Grim Reaper tee. Like I was super stoked to get Mark Morton on board. I am a metal and punk guy at my core and country as well. So that helps, with the other demographic. Right. But I don't think that's all my influence, but I am probably the biggest metalhead, in the quote unquote leadership there.
Yeah.
So it's probably something to do with it.
And what was it about a year ago? Chris did a set for you, Alex, a set of the specific gauges that you use. Chris put a set of those together for him.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought things were great. There was a 1356 is standard, and I'm not the biggest expert on strings. Like when you guys were talking, it was like you guys were talking about the flux capacitor to me, and but it was very interesting, and a lot of the things you guys said is very important to me as far as when I'm on the road, and and I'm not the guy who's like, say if a text asks me like, oh, well, when do you want your strings changed? You want them changed every day, and I'm the guy that's just like, no, I these couple, I'll go for a week,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
as long as they're, they sound good and they feel good. And, as far as I'm concerned, takes a few days for even to kind of dig into the strings and really wear them in playing. But yeah, one of the things I noticed about them is they did last for a long time compared to the brand that I've been using for decades now. But yeah, and they felt different too, and so because my understanding about Stringjoy was it was not a hard rock or metal string company, and I was actually really impressed with the strings, and I was also notice like you mentioned Mark, that Mark has like a signature string set with you guys as
He
well.
does, yeah.
Yeah, they're really fascinating stuff. But like I said, all those things that you discussed is important to me as far as especially being on the road. As far as the intonation and the strings lasting and the feel, and they do feel different. I don't know what it is. Like I said, it's like talking about the flux capacitor when we're talking about string. I have no clue what you guys are talking
which
about.
is funny because when you feel the way when we were talking about strings that everybody around you feels while you're on tour and you're nerding about every piece of gear. You're just not there with strings yet. So that's how everybody's looking at it. Actually, his bandmates did that we saw him down in Richmond and he started talking gear and they looked at us. They were like, oh my God, here they go again.
Here we go again. Yeah.
So, Alex, you just got to experience what Bob and them deal with every time. Bob and Rolf with you. When you're talking it, they're going, oh, geez, flux capacitor.
I'm just listening and learning, so.
Yeah, well, it's cool stuff. So, I know I said an hour. If you have time for two more.
Yeah, let's go.
So, well, the one is, so is there a story behind? I don't mind it, so I'm not saying it like I mind it. So, Stringjoy strings have a very long tail when you get done, like eye pokers. So, is there a reason for that?
There is, and it's kind of funny because it's a bit based on what Alex just said. He didn't originally view us as like a hard rock and metal kind of company. Early on, we're starting as a custom string shop, right? Well, most of our customers were gentlemen, wanting to tune down to drop Q. And so we have a lot of metal customers. That's actually a huge portion of our fan base is people playing like more experimental things. And it's just where we got our feet wet. And so we've always been really cognizant of sometimes these people are playing reverse headstocks, 30 plus inch scale length guitars, and sometimes, especially in the case of people with that are doing like a bass 6 baritone conversion or something, they've got all that meat hanging out back here and then a super long scale length and that crazy headstock. So we basically been like, okay, what is the max we can do without being crazy that will fit pretty much everything? And that's why they're so long. Because it doesn't really cost us that much. It would be more expensive to try to keep adjusting lengths all the time.
True. That makes sense.
So just to have standard length, these are what these are, these are what these are, run them like that, and then they'll work for everybody. That's why we do it.
Yeah. And I like that. And it's a lot better. I'm not going to smear any other string, but there's two string companies that when I get those, the long necks, reverse headstock and all that, and I'm trying to work with like that much extra and I'm cussing at them the whole time. So when I get to yours, it's like, wow. But sometimes I think, and you just explained it great. Sometimes I think it's like, wow, with the extra string, you could almost make another string with 3 of these tails, So, but you just explained that, like, it's not that much extra.
Yeah, it's not from a cost perspective. It'd be more expensive to adjust the labor to make them shorter.
Right. That makes sense. And there's, I told you I had one younger. He may be out watching actually, and he tunes way down. And we had one where the taper wasn't quite long enough, and your guys worked with us on that. The next set's going to be longer. But yeah, that makes total sense with some of these. Like some of the longer necks, reverse headstocks, weird tunings, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that makes sense. What I've noticed, and I don't know if you all have noticed this as a trend, it seems to me that the people that are pushing Stringjoy the most are, for lack of better terms, kind of like the boutique guys. Do you all
Yeah.
notice that as a trend?
I mean, that's the world we come from, right? You know, we're still the small guys in this world. And
Yeah.
so a lot of our friends along the way were companies that either started at the same time as us, or, you know, people that, you know, the boutique pedal builders, like the boutique
Yeah.
pedal world is like where I
Yeah.
feel like I really come from,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and where a lot of my friends are, even though I do something different. That
Right.
is like very much was my first entry point in the gear world. Like I remember my first NAMM and meeting Zachary Vex and be like, oh my goodness, Zachary Vex. But like, he's
Right.
like a normal dude, you know, like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
as normal as that can be. He's obviously
Right.
pretty genius, but
Yeah.
it's, we just come from that world, I think. And so
Right.
a lot of the builders we work with also come from that world.
Right. Right.
And we're down to expand, and we have been. We've gotten
Yeah.
some interest from some bigger brands for providing stuff, and
Right.
you know, we're doing more and more all the time. So yeah, the
Right.
boutique world
Right.
is the reason you see that is that's just the world we live in.
Well, and I think some of it, the way, at least the way it works in my head, is like when you're in the bigger box stores, because you're in Sweetwater now, right?
We're in Sweetwater. We've been there, I think, 2
A
years now.
while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're in Guitar Center online,
Yeah.
and possibly we're hearing some rumblings that maybe will be rolled out into more stores here pretty soon, but
Right.
that's not confirmed yet. But that's kind of
Right. Right.
that's the way they're pushing.
Well, and I'll tell you what I told Chris, like, don't forget us little guys, because I think, like, where I was going with that, like, when you're going in the big boxes, like, when you walk in there, like, there's different kinds of string buyers. There's the guys like, I've used that pink 942 Super Slinky since I was a teenager. That's all I'm ever going to use. I'm not going to sway from that.
Mhm.
But when you go into the big box stores, it's just you're one of many sets of strings on a wall. But I think the guys like me that are out here that are, you know, like really getting in and analyzing what you're doing, and the people are coming in asking us like, what do you think? I think that's like the grassroots kind of thing, you know, if that makes sense.
It does. I mean, we're not going to change the way we do things, because
Yeah.
the way we do things are why these big stores are even interested in the first place.
Sure.
They're
Sure.
interested because our customers are going to them and saying,
Yeah.
why don't you have these? The only
Right.
reason we're in Sweetwater, I'll tell you, this is funny. It's a little inside baseball.
Okay.
I've been working with Sweetwater on the content side for a long time.
Okay.
And the contact I had there, I said, hey, you know, I got this string company. We should be with you guys. What are we doing here? And they were like, that's not my department. Let me get you to the person that it is.
Yeah.
So they hooked me up, email intro and all that stuff. And I was expecting at least have a conversation. And what I
Right.
was told was as professional and polite of terms as possible is thanks, but no thanks. I didn't even
Really?
get to get into the spiel at all.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. Fast forward to GearFest. I'm like, Scott, send me a large box of product. I'm infiltrating this place. And so he sent me a big box of stuff. I handed it out to my media people. I handed it out to some of the guests I was interviewing. And most importantly, the media people I was working with got it to the people that run that stuff.
Right.
And the reaction was still kind of the same. Not exactly, but it was like, who is this? What is this? I don't know. They got stuff floating in their face all day, you know, about people trying to pitch them on stuff.
Yeah.
So Chris contacts them and kind of gets the ball rolling. And they're still kind of lukewarm on it. They're like, I don't know. And then they started asking their people. And then they realized, wow, several hundred of our sales engineers who could get strings down there in the Sweetwater store are choosing to go over here.
Right.
The repair shop was having to wait regularly for 4 and 5 days because the customer said, hold on, I got to put my Stringjoy order in because you guys don't carry them.
Right.
And having to sit on projects waiting for our stuff.
Yeah.
And they went, oh. So all that to say is the only reason that they're even interested is because people like yourself and the customers out there keep asking because of the way we do things. So we're not going to stop doing them that way. We're just going to do more of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have people, when they come in the door, they've already looked at my social media and my website, and they've seen you all on there, and they'll say, I see you carry Stringjoy. Can I try those out? So, and like I said, 80% of what leaves here, you know, I have the people that are going to play what they've always played, and that's cool.
Yeah.
And I'm a dealer for other strings too, and that's cool. I'm just trying to save people a trip to the store, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But 80% probably leave here with Stringjoys. And it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it usually is.
Yeah, and that's what we
Because
found
it's
too.
something different and better, I think.
Yeah,
My opinion.
That mirrors exactly what we see, roughly. You know, they're not for everybody because some people have gotten really used to things that we're not going to do, and that's okay.
Right.
I go make music. My feelings aren't hurt.
I'm going to tell you this: if a guy says that he plays boomers, you're never ever going to convert him.
Nope.
I've learned that if a guy says boomers, he's boomers for life.
Yeah, because he likes that big core like type of sound. And until we do something like that, which I don't see happening, not saying never, but I don't see it happening.
Right.
That's a very specific feel and sound that isn't gonna, that's how you get it. And we wanted to opt for something a little different. So
yeah. Well, and I only say that because my wife doesn't play guitar, but she does all my paperwork for this, and she just notices trends. And like if a guy says he plays boomers, that and bass strings, we don't even mess with bass strings. And we used to carry Stringjoy bass strings, but then we realized like bass strings are number one. They don't change them a lot. They really like the brand they've always played, and they're expensive. So we just tell people to bring their own. But the other is boomers. She's like, guys that like boomers aren't even going to sway a little bit. She just notices it. She's not even a guitar person. I was like, yep, boomer guys are boomer guys.
Yep. Yeah, and the bassist, I mean, they've stuck with that brand because that's the first brand they bought, and they've never changed them. So that's why.
Right. We've talked with bass players about that, and that was a weird adjustment for us in the beginning when we first opened up. We were like, man, what's up with the bass players? Like, save the strings. Like, I don't want to save the strings. They're nasty.
They're disgusting. Yeah,
exactly. So the very last thing is I watched you and Tim Peirce. I mentioned this in the email to you today, the Widex hearing protection. So I think that's super important. That's something I think the music industry is sleeping on.
I think it's getting talked about more. At least at the shows here locally, there's more just general like construction style foam plugs that are just there at the venue for people to grab oftentimes, which is really nice. I've always been really cognizant of it myself. My ears are pretty good. Knock on wood. My dad's are just genetically not good. Right. And so that's part of it. I've always tried to take care of them. I mean, I remember I worked around heavy equipment and banging on metal with hammers and stuff for a huge portion of my career. And I would watch guys just go in and, don't be a sissy, just hit it. Rah. I'm like, nope. If I'm going to lose my hearing, it isn't going to be because of this. This is stupid. Like, I like going to rock shows. I like having a good time there. If that's where I'm going to get my hearing damage done, I'm going to do it at those places. But now you just don't have to. They make great hearing protection that lets you still hear the music. I don't have any association with that brand whatsoever. That was totally Tim's thing. I think it is overlooked, and I think anybody listening or watching this, save your ears. You only get 2 of them.
That's right. And I can tell you from somebody, I mentioned this to you today, like somebody that, like, everything I've done my entire life has been loud, from music and amps and playing guitar to sirens in my ear to fire alarms going off in your ears. And I didn't protect them. So I live with a constant hissing in both ears. So when he made a valid point, and it kind of reinforced what my wife yells at me about all the time. She's like, you need to go to an audiologist because there's a definite link. And he really hit that between that and dementia. So, which runs deep into my family. And so, I heard that. I looked him up immediately because of the way you all were talking about it, and just some of the benefits that he mentioned, and the way he mentioned it separates the frequencies and things like that. I was like, okay, I need to look him up. So definitely the next move, because you're right. I mean, when you need to start, the time when you need to start protecting your hearing is when you're younger. And I went to a thing, Alex, we had School of Rock on last week on the show. And I went to see one of their functions, and I walked in the door, and I was there 10 seconds, and and they weren't even playing that loud. It just pierced my ears. I forgot my hearing protection, and I had to leave. So yeah, you're right. You have to take care of it when you're younger, because when you're my age, you regret it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that was really, Alex. What else do you have? We kept them over. Sorry, man. Sorry, Blake.
Yeah.
No, you're good.
That's almost 40 years of music blaring in my ears. So yeah, I need to take care of mine now. So
yeah,
but yeah, I mean that's it. I know you got a split, Blake, and it was just really a pleasure to hear you talk and to get into things. And I'm gonna dive more into your podcast. And and just thank you for coming on tonight. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun, and it's hard for us to hold it to an hour and 20.
It's hard for me too, so don't you worry.
Oh, well, if you're good, we can keep talking. If you want to talk more about gear, I'm just trying to be conscious of your time. And
no, I do need to split. I got to go get the kiddos ready for bed here. So
okay,
but I do appreciate you guys inviting me on. I really enjoyed it. I love doing this kind of thing, and if you ever want me to bore you with more nonsense, I'm happy to do it.
Definitely. We talk a lot about doing these roundtables where we like to get people like us and musicians and just have like a discussion group. We've had like a bass roundtable, like to get local people and touring people all together and just have a general discussion, otherwise known as BSing about gear and stuff.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Great. So if you're game, we'll hit you up.
Yeah, please hit me up anytime.
Yeah, definitely. All right, man. Thanks for joining us. Everybody hang out and we'll talk about next week. Thanks again, Blake. We appreciate it, and great meeting you.
Great meeting you too. Thank you to everybody out there. You made it. You're a real champion for making through it.
And Stringjoy, go watch his podcast, listen to his podcast, and buy his strings.
Thank you so much.
Take care, buddy. I appreciate it. Hey, great, man. He was a good dude.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear him talk. And like I said,
I know
I'm not a string expert whatsoever. I know it works for me, and it's I just stuck with that for decades now. So
I mean some of it.
I only have experience with one set you got.
And those were the non-coded ones. So and I know for anybody that's still watching, maybe talking about strings is kind of boring, but some of their processes are pretty fascinating, and to go a little more into it, like there's other companies, and he mentioned it at the beginning. So there are, there's just a few companies that are making strings for several different named companies, if you will, manufacturers making them for named companies. But then there's a couple that are using, like, the only difference is they're taking somebody else's string and dunking it in like a Gore-Tex type of material. But when they do that, the string is already wound. So like the covering is covering the whole thing after it's wound. So that's why, and people do describe it as slimy to me a lot.
So now I'm going to pick your brain on this, is the differences. You're talking about the coated and that are non-coated. Now, the ones that you got me, I did notice they felt completely different. They were darker.
Right.
Now, if anybody that's still watching out there, I use the Dario strings. I've been using for 30 something years now.
Right.
And they're obviously the color obviously is different. They're very silvery, and these strings were almost black, right? So is that the difference, where there's something is not being applied to them?
Well, I think so the ones that you had weren't coated,
because I have no clue about strings.
Yeah, but they weren't. And what I notice is, and these are just my observations, and that's here. That doesn't mean it's everywhere. Is I get a lot of guys that play rock and roll that are around my age, plus or minus a couple years. They don't like the coated strings, and they want what they've always played and what is close to what they're familiar with and what they've grown up with, which is 9 times out of 10 Ernie Ball, Super Slinky, something like that, hybrids. So they want something that feels like that, but feels like that texturally, but they like the responsiveness and they like the way that these balance out. So, and that's where Scott, the owner, really goes into detail, and you can look up a lot of interviews and him describing them. So he wants things to be balanced. And so if you're doing a bend on, let's just use E standard. If you're doing a bend on the high E, when you go to the B string and bend it, you're going to have the same tension. So that, and I think that's what he's referring to with the balancing. So, and they are string nerds, and he says that's kind of where I got that, and I think that's a super interesting part. But that it was interesting to me also to hear how he says, so they have different thicknesses in their cores also before they wind the wires. But when they wind, and like I said, yours was uncoated. The coated, I'm a coated guy. I like the coated strings a lot. And I like theirs even more. And there's a lot of reviews out there with the coated ones. So they coat it in their material and then they wrap it around the core.
So why the Darias that I use are coated? Is that correct?
Yours are not coated.
Not coated.
They're not coated. No, no. So yeah, and that's why when we made you that set, I wanted you to have like for like, I didn't want you to, like you were playing uncoated. I didn't want to get you coated because it's not an apples to apples kind of comparison. And I was just trying to get your opinion to see how you, like when I became a dealer, like I said, the companies, man, they're just phenomenal to deal with. And most of them that I deal with are, even Ernie Ball. My rep from Ernie Ball is a great guy too. But after he explained why the way that they wind and the, under tension and all that kind of stuff, it explained why I noticed what I did, because I just go on observations. It's like, wow, well, I don't have to keep doing this crazy, like stretch this, stretch that, tune it, retune it. They just kind of like stretch them once, maybe twice, and they're there and they stay in tune, which is important for them to be, pretty, the same way every time, consistency, and that's what I found with him. And there have been times, like I talked about a couple of things, the one issue, and I don't know that it was their issue, could have been, but it was an issue where it was a customer, and this has been years ago. He would send me pictures. He's kind of a friend too. He would send me pictures, and you probably know the story, like his fingers from here to the tip would be black from playing. And, I reached out to my rep, who reached out to the owner, and they were all very interested. Send me pictures, send me this, tell me more, tell me this, tell me that. And I'm not sure. So it came down to it's happened with one person one time. And I think it may have been something I was putting on his fretboard. Like maybe he was having a reaction to that, like the F1 oil or lemon oil, whatever I was using back then. But it happened one time. And I kind of joke with that customer now and tell him he's banned from Stringjoy because I don't want to have any more pictures of black fingers sent to me. But they were very responsive. The other thing was, this happened to me. I had to order some, if you're going to break a string while you're stretching strings out, it's going to be, the high E or string number one. And I was stretching them in on this one order that I made, and I kept busting them. So I had to order a set of just the tens. I ordered a set of nines instead of tens, just the one single string. So when I broke them, I didn't have to break open another whole pack. So they were very attentive to the fact that, okay, so where did it break? What were you doing? Did it break at the ball? Did it break here? But you could tell they were taking notes to see if they had a bad batch, a bad run, or whatever. And it didn't happen before, and it hadn't happened since. And I think it was only with one, because when I buy them in bulk. So I think it was one case that I bought that a few. I think it was like 3 in a case of 12 that it happened to, but they were very responsive and took care of it. So that's why I kind of wanted to get them on, because people hear a lot about them. I think maybe the name Stringjoy is a little I don't know. It doesn't really, especially metal people, death metal people, they hear Stringjoy. It's maybe the name isn't dark enough. They're thinking something else. But then when they try them, I find that people, when they try them, like them. And a good example is yesterday I had somebody bring in an acoustic guitar, and this is kind of like twofold about a new player and strings. So he had bought a guitar, sounded very dull, things like that. He wanted to know if there was anything we could do with the guitar. So it turned out the strings on it were dead. He bought it secondhand. So he told me that, who was playing it. It was his wife. She, is fairly new, but plays the guitar and plays it in church and things like that. But she was more concerned with, the amount of pressure that it took. So I took to fret the chords. So I took a set of Stringjoy 10s and put them on there. And even 10, as light of a gauge as that is for an acoustic, they sounded great. They had a nice booming sound in them. They felt good on the guitar. He liked it because he plays guitar a little bit also. Kind of curious. Should have texted him today, see how his wife liked it. But that's a good example. I mean, the strings, I like them a lot, but they're also different. The paradigms are good with Ernie Ball. I like those also. So yeah, good company, good conversation. He's I think he out-nerded the two nerds tonight.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he knows his stuff. You could tell he's well read on guitar gear. So, but yeah, I've been waiting for this a long time to have Stringjoy on here just to kind of showcase what they do. I like that they're getting into the metal because in the beginning I kind of, they're in Nashville, so I kind of associated them with bluegrass and country, but it doesn't seem like they're going that direction. And we've talked about the younger guys coming in here with what did the one come in like 14 to 386? I don't know. It was like some thick strings, and they did a custom line for them. So they're doing some cool stuff for some people that are playing in some really low tunings and some dark, heavy rock,
Yeah, no, I've actually seen it myself. Quite a different, variety of metal guys using Stringjoy now. So
yeah. So it's cool. It's good to have him. And then now, do you want to finish talking about next week? And then if nobody has any questions, we can shut her down.
Yeah. So next Thursday night we will just have a little. Myself, I got a few messages requesting this, so I was just like, yeah, why not? And so next week, me and Craig will be on. Craig Smolowski, who was drummer of Goreaphobia in the early days, and also the drummer of Immolation. And actually, Craig he's got some stuff that he's working on actually now.
Yeah,
he's a new band that he can discuss as well on the show. But
yeah,
so we're going to get into the release 35 years ago now of the Goreaphobia Morbidius Pathology 7-inch that we recorded. And yeah, we'll get into the recording of that and talk a little bit about the early days. So if anybody wants to come on and throw us some questions up front, maybe we'll tomorrow, and people can send us in some questions and join us for the chat for me and Craig, and we'll try to answer your questions to the best.
That's a great idea. If anybody that watches this, or if you know anybody that's going to tune in for the Goreaphobia show, if you could email the questions in ahead of time, that would be awesome, because I could throw that in and we can wait a minute, does this mean I'm interviewing you too? Or are we just going to have a conversation?
Yeah, we'll just have a conversation, whatever.
Okay. I was trying to see if I had to stress out like I did with Bob. It just registered. I was like, oh man, does this mean I'm interviewing again?
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. I just, you know me. What's that?
So you can ask some interesting questions. So,
what do I say all the time? I ask the every person question. But seriously, if anybody has any questions, email them either directly to me or in through the Guitar Gear Locker Gmail email address. And that way I can throw it on a question list and we'll get to you. But also just, I mean, shoot them in the comments also. And Cheech, did we bore you tonight with all the string stuff and the crocheting? Sweet, great show. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, I know it was kind of geeky, but I think it's kind of cool too. I mean, this is kind of cool stuff to cover too.
Oh, it was educational for me because I don't normally think about what goes into winding a string. And, mechanics behind all that. So it's really interesting. Like I said, I just I've used the Dario strings, which I love the Dario. That's why I use them. But to something that I've used for years, and I've just geared to that. Whether it's a 1356 set because tuned down from anywhere from C standard to my other band Ruinous, which is tuned to A standard.
Right.
So it's still the same 1356. If I'm going anywhere from E, to D, then I'll use 10 gauge string. That's my comfort zone. So it was very interesting.
And the 10, he didn't say it tonight, but I've watched other ones, and I know this because I experience it. Like their most popular gauge, they are the 1048s. And I'm telling you, the first time, because guys are used to 1046s, and when they ask for that, they say, "Hey, I know you're a Stringjoy dealer. I'd like to try those out. I use 1046s," and I say, "Well, they don't really they do 1048s," and you always get kind of that. What do you mean? But then they try them out, and I most like it. It's not some people's cup of tea, but that's a very small percentage, I think. But cool. All right, everybody, please like and subscribe. Also, check out Stringjoy Strings in the Tone Mob podcast. He was a lot of fun tonight. Check him out and his podcast. And check us out next week. Thanks for joining.
See you guys next week.